Hello. This one will be a different video, as I just go through the changes made to the repository. Since it was mostly UI improvements, and redoing it for recording and then doing a tutorial video would take too much time, and I was busy with other things. Let's go through the main changes I did. In the lobby creation, not much changed. I just replaced the lobby description with a multi-line text box and made a custom modular combo box to reuse. The custom modular combo box is just a regular common widget with an overlay and a combo box inside it. It has a pre-construct with various setup options to cater to our needs. Those options are exposed in the editor, and I added descriptions to each one of them. If the manual setup option is ticked, then the combo box is like a regular combo box with default values. Because the options are in the pre-construct, they affect the changes in the editor. This custom combo box does not use the default options, but it uses data assets to set the available options. I'll explain data assets in a bit, but first let's go and see what it is replacing. As you can see, we have two map structures, one old one and one for map data assets. With the old one, you put all the variables inside the structure and then created a data table to input the entries. With the data asset structure, we just use the data asset as a single variable, mostly to use data tables as array storage for us. The new maps data table now just acts to add the data assets. We could have used just an array of data assets, but I decided to go with data tables. Now that I will be deleting the old data table and structure for the maps, I will talk more about the data assets. Data assets in Unreal Engine are a type of asset that allow you to store and manage game data outside of the actual level or blueprint logic. Some key things to know about data assets. They are essentially serialized object files that can be created, edited, and referenced from within the Unreal editor. Common examples include things like material parameters, particle system configurations, animation data, and other reusable game information like in our case for maps and game mode data. Data assets provide a centralized way to define and organize game data, making it easier to share and reuse across multiple parts of your project. They can be loaded and referenced at runtime, allowing your game logic to dynamically access the data they contain. Data assets have their own editor interfaces and tooling, giving you fine-grained control over how the data is authored and structured. The key benefit of data assets is that they decouple your game data from the underlying code and blueprints. This makes your project more modular, flexible, and easier to maintain over time. Now let's look at the data assets. To create a data asset, you need to go to Blueprints and search for Data Asset. And choose the primary data asset. I have already created two of them, and now here are the old structure variables for our maps: map name, map texture, and map travel string. But in this case, we're not using a structure. Here we just create the variables we want to reuse for our needs. And this data asset, as a separate asset, already holds the variable content for the name of the map, what texture to use, and the map travel string. I've done the same thing for our non-existent game modes, which is another example use case. This data asset contains just the game mode name and description for now. This combo box uses the data asset to fill the option names and changes the game mode description using the data asset values. So here you add data assets to be used as combo box selections. I think that's mostly it for the combo box changes. In the graph itself, not much has changed. I just made a change to not save the inputs as variables and instead take the values directly when creating the lobby. Only the game mode and maps have an event to handle the selection change. And the lobby creation now has no inputs. Everything is handled within the macro itself. To handle the lobby description, I created a helper function in our function library to select the message length. EOS itself doesn't allow strings longer than 250 characters, but it's nice to have our own shortening function for this. Even if it looks a bit messy, it's a pretty simple function that takes the text, converts it to a string, checks the length of it, and if it's longer than our selected length, it cuts it down. And we have a selection to use then no text was written in the description input. I think it's most of changes to lobby creation. Here I would like to take the time to ask, do you use my repository or just redo the code for your project? And which format is better, a tutorial or an explanation? Leave a comment below. I just didn't want to redo it all for a video, as that would take too much time. I will still do some short tutorials. What should I do next? Should I focus on simple matchmaking or integrate the EOS voice functionality? Here I utilize a new thing I recently learned. You can use an event dispatcher to create an onSelectionChanged event, similar to the original combo box functionality. This selection exists because of that event dispatcher. Now for the lobby widget, not much has changed. I just replaced the general combo boxes with our custom ones, and for the checkbox, I used a copyright-free and attributes-free toggle image. The checkbox is not modular. I just copy this checkbox from the hierarchy tree or copy the style of it for reuse. Sometimes, copying the entire style can bug out the editor and revert it to a generic checkbox. So in those cases, I just copy each style element separately. Alternatively, I can just copy-paste the full checkbox from the hierarchy into the other widget. In the graph, not much has changed. I might have just replaced the data tables with ones that use data assets as the table rows. And now to the gist of it, the lobby browser. For the lobby browser, the changes have mostly been on the UI side. I stylized the buttons, combo boxes, and toggle checkboxes. I started making those changes here in the lobby browser, but then had to make sure to apply the same UI improvements to the lobby creation and lobby widget as well. First, I realized why I had made those separate UI elements. Then we have a prompt stack where we can push such things. So I reworked the original prompt that we created in the menu tutorial and added some modular customization to it. For example, I made it so that a text input field is shown when needed. This is a new prompt setup event that includes customization variables, allowing for more flexibility and tailored prompts. This is how you create one. We have an enum for the prompt task, a stack that creates this prompt text, and a checkbox to determine if we want an input field. If the checkbox is checked, we can set the input field hint text and error message for the pop-up. In this specific case, the prompt is used when no lobbies are found with the given ID. Additionally, we have a field for a password input prompt. And now, once the prompt is added to the stack, we disable three elements: the filter box, the lobbies list, and the lobby info widget. This is mostly it for prompts. In the prompt creation, we can also change the button names depending on the specific task that the prompt is handling. For the new tasks, I created macros. For the password prompt specifically, we compare the input field value with the lobby's password. If they match, the prompt dispatches a confirmation that the task has been completed. For the session code prompt, we try to use the input to find the session with such ID. If we find the session, we attempt to join it. If we don't find the session, we show an error message. Also, I realized that I used to make pop-up text in the old way, not utilizing the common UI. So I made a prompt widget just for pop-up text that we can also customize. I won't go into much detail as it's just a text widget with some inputs, created the same way as the prompt. For the lobby entry, there weren't many changes. I just made the less fields with information and added icons to indicate if the lobby has a password and/or if voice chat is enabled. The widget construction event is mostly the same. The biggest change now is the event dispatcher that pushes the changes to the main lobby browser widget with all the lobby data that we need. This is where the lobby browser binds all the entry widgets. Then, when we click on one, it passes all the info to the lobby info widget to showcase. Binding happens, then we create lobby entry widget. And then, when an entry widget is clicked in the lobby browser, we pass the info to the lobby info widget. Since we have it in our hierarchy, we can use it as a variable and call the construction event. And here we have our info widget. It's a scroll box that contains box elements to showcase the lobby info, like the hostname, description, game mode and its description, map and its image, and to show if voice chat is enabled and if the lobby has a password. The Join button calls the dispatcher that we integrated into the lobby browser widget. It has a Boolean value that depends on whether anything was typed in the password field when creating a lobby. This is the dispatcher implemented event. Here we check if the lobby has a password and create a password input prompt if it does. As for the filter options, it uses data assets of what we want to filter. On selection change, we add the attribute value of the option name. It looks a bit messy, but it's not complicated. If option is of any value, we remove the attribute. If it's not of any option, we add it to the session settings to find lobbies with those attributes. I also kept the first version of my attempt to make filters for the lobby search. This version might be easier to digest. Both versions will work. This version just does the adding of session settings attributes before the search, each time clearing the session settings array. To use it, you just add this function before find EIK sessions. This is it for now. I would really appreciate a comment on what you'd like to see implemented from EIK in the example project. And since Betide has released their plugin for Steam, I would like to test it and would greatly appreciate any donation toward purchasing the Steam app ID. Thanks for watching.